What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of On a Couch Talking Sports. As always, I'm Robbie, joined as always by Kyle. Kyle, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Robbie. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. Another beautiful Wednesday night here in late August, so can't complain. And tonight we are very happy to be joined once again by another one of our favorite special guests. Our buddy Scott is returning to the Zoom. How you doing, Scott?
Good. How are you, Robbie and Kyle?
Doing great. Doing great. Glad to have you back. Like I said, not on a couch, but on a Zoom, talking sports.
On my couch.
Oh, you're on your couch. Perfect. Yeah, I'm in a chair.
You're the only one out of all of us on a couch. Like, I'm just on this chair over here.
Yeah, the guest is the only one sticking to the day of the show, but that's okay. So if you've been watching our last few episodes, you'll know that we have been diving deep into the high school track career of my beloved co-host Kyle here, and we're going to sort of wrap up this four-part series of that with taking a look back at our senior year, 2007 into 2008, sort of incorporating, like we did last episode, the winter and spring track and field seasons. And the reason why we have Scott on is that it's not random, folks, I promise, is that Scott was actually also a member of the 2008 spring track and field team as well, so he's going to give sort of his insights to that year as well. So a lot to get to. So Scott, like I said, he did the spring season. He did not do the winter season. So I'm actually going to kick it off here with Kyle just briefly on the winter season before we sort of take a deeper, bigger dive into that spring 2008 season. But Kyle, again, going into that winter season of 07, 08. Obviously, you had 1 year of the winter season under your belt. Now you're coming into your sort of final year of all these different track seasons, being a senior. What was your mindset, sort of expectations heading into your senior season of winter track and field?
So that was honestly an interesting one because so this was the first year we didn't have, Coach Ruben as our throwing coach.
Yeah.
He had already, I think he had gone to a different school at that point. And so I don't even think we actually had a coach that season. It was kind of strange. We had, I think kind of just, coaches kind of like in and out. Just being like, hey, you guys know what to do, so just just do your training and stuff like that. If that's what I remember correctly, I think that's what happened. It was very interesting, yeah, because we didn't get a coach until we had Coach Davis actually, who was our throwing coach in the spring season, which I'll talk about more once we get there. But yeah, it was very it was a pretty solid second season of winter. I tried out for sprints, actually. I tried out to do the 200, and I was actually the best on the team. I don't know if you guys knew about that. No, I'm just kidding. I was going up and
that would have been okay.
Scott, we'll just leave it right there. But yeah, so that's okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kyle, but the thought of you being a sprinter is just a little bit hard to grasp at the moment, but you go for it, man. I'm sure you went out there and sprinted hard.
Well,
or hardly sprinted, one or the other.
We'll go a little more on the hardly sprinting but I will say I was a rock star at sprinting compared to distance running. Oh my God, I could not do distance running to save my life. That's why I didn't even go near that. That was all you, Scott. That was you. You're the distance guy. I couldn't do that.
I'll take those miles.
But yeah, Kyle, so just, again, I kind of want to keep the the winter stuff, a little bit brief here, just so we can sort of move on to the bigger spring segment. But do you have any particular memories for you personally, or just in general from that sort of 07, 08 winter season part of things?
Well, I mean, it wasn't really that different from the year before. I remember I had it was interesting, starting track, now realizing like, I'm of the oldest class now, so that was kind of crazy. So yeah, I remember no, there was actually a quick story I got to tell you. Then we can get to like the outdoor stuff, because not really, it wasn't anything like memorable during that year. Meet wise, we went back to Reggie Lewis, did all that, donkeys trips and everything, all that happened. But so there was a really funny moment where, do you remember Alex Stone?
Of course. I didn't participate, but I know Alex Stone just because he was in our grade, and I went like through 12 years of school with him. So yeah, I definitely know Alex Stone.
So Alex also did football, so we all knew him from the football team as well. So, and actually, I'm sorry, this actually happened the year prior, but I just have to tell you the story just because it's one of my favorite indoor track stories of all time. Okay. So there was a moment where we were practicing. So for those of you who missed last episode or were wondering, hey, where did these throwers, practice during the indoor season? Because we didn't have an indoor track or an indoor, ring or anything like that to throw shot put in. We would throw in the gym. So that was we throw like the plastic shot puts filled with like metal and everything, and we throw it in the gym. That was our normal practice. So one time we were throwing with this was back when Coach Rubin was there. This was junior year, and Alex was a great thrower. He could throw far. He was definitely, I'd say, the best thrower, at least in in our class, in Robbie and I's class. But there was one time where he had literally thrown the shot put, and it went so far off the side, it just hit the fire alarm.
Oh, no.
He literally just shattered the fire alarm.
Oh, no.
I'll never forget. Coach Rubin was just like he looked at Alex. He was like, "What?" And Alex was like, "Oh, shit." And as soon as he said, "Oh, shit," the fire alarm just started going off. It was, oh my God. It was one of my favorite moments.
Was this in the, because obviously this is the old high school building, obviously. Was this in the upstairs gym or the downstairs gym?
It was in the upstairs, right?
Which one?
Wasn't it upstairs?
Yes, yeah. We practiced in the upstairs, the smaller one. So.
And that's a small gym too. So it's not hard for things to sort of get away from you in that gym.
Yeah. That was probably my favorite story from indoor track. I forgot to tell you guys actually last week.
That's all right. That's all right.
Didn't Alex also do basketball?
No.
I don't think so.
No, he didn't. No, I think he just did football and track, from what I remember. I don't remember him doing basketball.
Yeah.
Maybe he was in one of my gym classes that involved basketball.
Probably. I know he did basketball back like when we were growing up in like elementary and middle school, but I think that was about it. But anyway, great story. Great. That does not surprise me whatsoever. So now I kind of want to move on, like I said, to the crux of our episode tonight, which is the 2008 spring outdoor track and field season. And I want to bring Scott in here because Scott, like I said, was a sophomore that year, whereas Kyle and I were seniors. And Scott, I know you were telling us that was actually your first year of doing high school track and field, like I said, your sophomore year. So just sort of, first things first, sort of talk about heading into that season, sort of why you decided to get involved in it that particular year, or just in general, and sort of what your expectations were going into it.
So I did 6th, 7th, 8th grade in track, and then just chose to see what high school was all about for freshman year, because I knew it was going to be harder than middle school, obviously. And then realized that I had the time for running, So sophomore year, I picked up cross country, and then nice to have the same coaches from cross country are also then your track coaches for running, at least. So my expectations, I guess, were as a runner, you always want to beat your prior self, and it's such an individualistic sport, as well as if you're actually good, you're running against other people. But usually, if you're not a great athlete or not a great runner, you can still try to beat your old times. So that was my goal, is just to become faster and beat my own time. And then you can go from track, train all summer, and then go right into cross country that fall. So you kind of just get a one smooth running training season involving summer into fall, and then have a good base into fall, which actually got me my first varsity letter that fall. But that's different times. I will say, though, that it was nice to have my coach from cross country also be my coach in track, because then you get more familiar with the coach, and the coach knows you already. So, but that was also the year that there was a big rift in between the cross country coaches. So one was, I guess they both wanted to kind of run the team, so they butted heads, and then one became the overall boys coach, who was Bergeron. You remember Bergeron?
Yep.
One became the overall boys coach, who actually ended up winning the that little contest, I guess, because the other coach was only the long distance coach. And unfortunately, I guess that ended up being Bergeron's last season coaching, because I remember at the end of the year, well, we can get into highlights of that year later, but I remember that being his last year, which was interesting. First coach in high school, and left in my first year of high school. But,
I'm sure it was nothing personal, Scott.
No, it's nothing personal. In fact, we all had T-shirts that said Team Bergeron, and on the back had his face.
Yeah, I
And
remember that.
those baby blue shirts, and then it said "Don't get caught," because his running motto was "Whatever you do, don't get caught," which is a terrible motto for high school kids. But who cares? Because
it makes sense it makes perfect sense for like running track, but for anything else in high school, it's kind of like a little iffy.
Yeah.
Kind of throws up some red flags. It kind of throws up some red flags there.
Yeah. It was fun to be in that group.
Kyle, sort of same question to you. Again, you had been doing, obviously spring track for, all 4 years heading into that year. So just sort of, what were your thoughts heading into, like I said, kind of like with the winter season, heading into your final season of spring track, and like I said, having kind of like with football, having done for all 4 years.
It's interesting when after Scott brought up about the whole thing with like I remember all that with like the running or the long distance coaches, and because I remember that was the first time you're right, Bergeron was the head coach, or I think that year they did he was like the boys head coach, and then there was like a girls head coach. Is that right?
I think Griff was always the girls head coach, and in fact he still is the girls head coach.
Oh, cool.
10 years later.
Wow.
He's taking them to so many Bay State Conference championship titles. It's ridiculous. But yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, you're right. I remember that because it used to be, I think, even before you got there, Scott, and this is something I failed to mention, and I feel really bad. I remember Mr. Chisholm, who a lot of people knew as like he was one of the English teachers at the high school, and for a while he was even like the middle school principal, I think too. And I haven't spoken to him in a while, so I don't know if he is still at the middle school or not. But
Wait, who are you talking about?
Chisholm? Chisholm was the assistant principal for my 4 years.
Oh, he was, okay.
And he was my running coach in track to replace Bergeron for middle distance runners my junior and senior year. And he's now the principal.
I was about to say, can we just establish that Jamie Chisholm is now the principal of Wellesley High School, just for the record?
Once Keogh left, Chisholm replaced Keogh.
Yeah. When was that again?
Keogh left
probably like
4 years. I don't know. I think I'm trying to think.
It was after the new high school. It was after the new high school, which was 2011.
Yeah, well, I know. I'm trying to remember if like Keogh left when my sister was still there. So I'm going to research that. But you guys sort of, Kyle, continue sort of on where you were going.
Okay. So no, so the thing I failed to mention this, and my first 3 years of track, if I remember correctly, that Mr. Chisholm was the head coach of track, and this was, I think, before they decided to do a head boys and head girls coach. He was like the head coach, I think, of all of track. And then during my senior year, Scott's sophomore year, then they decided to split it up, with, you're right, like you said, Bergeron was the boys' head coach, and then Griff was the head girls coach. So yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of an interesting transition. It was the biggest transition I think I've ever seen throughout the whole track team, because not only with that in mind, not only did that happen, but this was, like I said before, this was the first time. This was the only year I've done high school throwing without Coach Rubin. So this time they replaced him with it was just for the time being, though. It was very temporary, I think. It was just for that one season. They had Coach Davis, who was, at the time, he was the line coach for football, but then he ended up becoming, now he's still the head coach of the high school football team. So, but it was interesting because, I got to give him a lot of credit. He really tried. He didn't know a whole lot about throwing, if I remember correctly. He was way more into football. That was really kind of his territory. But for being like a substitute coach, for the season, I thought he did a good job. I thought he really tried. I remember he came in, he had all these printed papers out because he was really trying to get the whole form of okay, this is how you do a shot put throw, this is how you do a discus throw, and everything. So it was a very interesting season in that sense, and because I had already known him, from being the line coach now of football. So it was actually kind of cool. It was kind of a fun way to, I feel like, end the senior of track. So
awesome. So I guess let's get into some memories here, and I'll start with Scott because, like I said, this was his first year of doing spring track, sophomore year, and all that fun stuff. And again, it's interesting because you two are kind of coming at it sort of two different perspectives in some sense, Kyle being on sort of the more throwing, the throwing side of things, and Scott being our first. Scott, before I get into sort of any sort of memories, why don't you just tell the folks on what events you did during your spring track career, or at least during that season?
At least during that season, I did the 800 meters, which is probably the worst event of all of track, because the 400 is you're sprinting for one lap. The 800 is you sprinting another lap after that, which means you're already dead after the first lap, and then you got to do it again. So it's just such a hard race to pace, and Yeah, I mean, he's the race though that if you're not a miler and you're not a 400, they throw every new person into middle distance into the 800, and then they see what kind of runner you are after, and then they sometimes will throw you to the mile, which is what I ended up doing the rest of my high school career with. But then at the same time, we did. I did the relay meet that year. I got invited to the relay meet because Bergeron, I guess, saw potential or something, and so they. I did the 4x4, which is you run with a baton, and 4 people in a row run a 400, which is kind of a cool thing. It's 4 people all running the same distance, but consecutively, and you're not all running at the same time. And then I also did the field part of track and field. I didn't throw, I jumped. So I did long jump, which as a non-sprinter, and you have to sprint before you jump into the sand pit. You're not great if you're not a sprinter, because you just get all that, you get a push off that's coming from being a lot faster going in to the sand. So I basically I fast strided in, which is very different from sprinting. And I ended up just basically fouling every meet because my foot would go over the line. I was not a good long jump person, but I did long jump because I thought I could do it, and then obviously could not. And then did triple later on in my high school career. But yeah, it was 800 that year. 800 with a 4x4, and yeah, I know the 800's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, it sounds rough. Sounds very rough, but I'm sure you did it to the best of your ability, as always.
I would say I was the type of person in high school that could jog the first 700 meters of the race, and then the last 100 meters would be all out, which is also a terrible way to race. So I'd get all my passes at the end, taking people out who were burned out by that part. So yeah, I wasn't a great racer in spring sophomore year track either, but hey, you gotta learn.
Yeah, definitely have to. So yeah, sort of building on that, any any particular memories, Scott? I'll go to you first on this. Any particular memories that you want to share from that sophomore year? I know you sort of alluded to some earlier, so just any particular memories that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that spring track year, the way that they worked us out, the way that they run track usually for long distance is you do strength, and then you do speed, and then you do peak workouts. So in all the strengthening parts, that's probably the most sore I've ever been in my life. You're doing plyometrics where you're basically sore from head to toe, and then you can't walk for a week because you're so sore. And then you do it again the next week and the next week. So you go through a lot of pain, but everybody goes through it, I guess. So you all kind of bond over pain.
Bond over pain.
I guess you bond over pain. I just remember that. And Nick Carroll was one of the guys captains.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
I think was your year, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And he would always try to create these beat circles. I'm not sure if he ever tried it with you guys, but he would like everybody do a different beat, and then you just try to culminate a sound that sounds really cool, whether or not it's actually sounds cool or not. That was always fun. And then I don't know, that year we went 3-3-1, which was interesting that we went absolutely 500, but whatever, I'll take it. And I remember the last meet of the season, Bergeron's last meet as a coach for Wellesley. It was all down to the javelin and the 4x4, because it always is. I don't know why, but for some reason it's always down to the javelin and the 4x4. We were tied. Somehow we pull out the win, and Bergeron gets the Gatorade shower at the very end, as though he won the freaking Super Bowl. But that was winning so that we could go 3-3-1. So we full on celebrated having a 500 season, which is kind of hilarious because that's not something that you celebrate. It's like the Browns doing a circle around their stadium in the shape of a 0 for the number of wins that they had. I don't know. But all in all, yeah, that was a fun year. That relay meet, I had never been to an invitational meet. And yeah, the track community, the cross country community, they're a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That sounds like an epic way to finish up a season. So, yeah, I mean, your last meet, if you get a victory as a coach, I mean, it's not, you deserve to get through the Gatorade bath if you win your last meet, especially in an exciting meet. So,
I think it was actually Alex Stone that poured the water on Bergeron as well, because he's tall enough. And Bergeron was actually standing when this happened. And somehow Stone was able to pour the water onto Bergeron, also standing, but Stone's like, what, 6'5"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's a big guy, yeah. Very big guy.
I'm not sure most people could pull that off, but he did, which just made it that much funnier.
Very nice.
Yeah. Go to Kyle.
No, yeah, I was just gonna ask Kyle, what Scott, if you have anything, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If there's anything else, you can go ahead and finish before I throw it to Kyle.
I mean, I'll add an addendum because you guys were such big, like, for track and field. You guys always thought that, like, so you guys did. Kyle, you did football. Robbie, you followed all the sports.
Yeah.
And like to Wellesley, Needham is the perennial rival every year.
Right.
In track, that's not entirely true because you don't actually play Needham. They were in the Bay State Carey Conference.
Yeah.
We were in the Bay State Herget Conference.
Right.
So you only play the 5 teams, the 5 other team play. You race the 5 other teams in the Herget and an additional 2 teams from the Carey Conference. So I think that year was like Weymouth and Framingham. Or that's completely on a whim. I might be wrong. But we did not play Needham. Natick actually was our perennial rival and probably gave us the most competition. Yeah. I think our one tie was against Natick that year. And we've Natick and cross country is also just as good. And I guess it's a little different when you're get it ingrained in your mind that you're supposed to hate Needham.
Oh, we hate Natick too. We hate Natick too. I mean,
we hate Natick too.
I feel like Natick is our second biggest rival behind Needham because that's sort of the other like neighboring town. We just always like in any sport like seem to have like just really exciting games against them.
Definitely a close second. Yeah.
It helps to have that. It helps to have a 130-something year-long football rivalry, right?
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, won't be getting out on the gridiron for Thanksgiving this year. But still always a thrilling contest whenever those two teams get together, as we've talked about many a time on this show.
Many a time.
Yeah. But Kyle, now let me throw it over to you. Just sort of, some of your favorite memories from that 2008 spring season.
Well, now that you bring it up, Scott, yeah, I do kind of remember the Natick meet, because you're right, they were a really great team, and even their throwers were just like, whoa, man, they were all like in the 40s, and I could barely even get close to 40 myself. I mean, I got better at throwing shot, but I could beat my own record, but I wasn't really on the level of I couldn't really compete against a lot of those other really good, players, like on the level of like Thomas and even Alex Stone. Alex was like the high 30s, close to 40s. I was kind of I kind of had your mentality, Scott, where I was more kind of trying to beat my score. I just wasn't good to. I mean, me personally, I just wasn't very. I really couldn't compete with a lot of the other throwers. I really couldn't. It was more just kind of a personal journey, I guess you could say. I do remember the Natick meet. I feel like we went there like all the time too. They never really came to our field. We always went to theirs, I feel like.
I don't know why. We always went there. And then, well, no, because we didn't do tri-meets in track. We did tri-meets at cross country, but that's a whole different ball game. But that was one of those years where it was I don't know. Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah, it was.
Let's go with that. It was interesting.
It was just.
I will agree with what you said, which is it's definitely an individual sport as much as it is a team sport.
Yeah. Especially when you go, you look at, I always had a, great time, when I wasn't throwing, I always try to cheer the other teammates on, and I'd always love to see. I always love watching the other races. The sprints and the distance and everything like that. And especially when you go outdoor, it just has that great feeling. And you really do feel like you're really part of the team. You're really supporting the team when you go to the other events and stuff like that, and it really made you feel good. And and it was always nice. I loved. Oh my goodness, that was like one of the greatest feelings when I see like maybe some of the runners who weren't running and they were cheering me on when I was throwing. I was like, oh, thanks guys. You're not going to see a whole lot, but thank you for cheering me anyway. So.
Yeah, I remember watching that. Like, you got your shot put thing had that metal bar that wasn't even screwed in for most of the season, right? If you accidentally hit that metal bar, it would just move.
Yeah,
and that's the metal bar that you're supposed to put your foot up against before you heave it as you do, because you're definitely not supposed to throw it like you do a baseball.
No. Oh, no. Your wrist, you wouldn't even have a wrist if you try to do that,
No wrist and no shoulder, I'm guessing.
Yes, yep. Yeah, just your whole arm would just like fall off,
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was I forgot about that. Actually, you're right. We had the because we had like it was funny because we had the discus section kind of like it was actually right next to like the practice field slash like the softball
What
field.
wasn't the discus you were like at a home plate of a baseball field and then you threw onto the baseball field?
Kind
And
of.
they,
Well, I think it was like a legit circle. Like they did have a legit circle for it, but you're right. Like we would actually throw it, and it would actually land on the baseball field. So luckily we didn't have many times where there would be any games at that point. But I think there were some meets even where we did have to wait for the game, so we had to like put the discus a little later or something like that, and then we would just get shot put out of the way because shot put was kind of on the side of the track, like right next to where. It was right next to like Honeywell Field, right next to where the road is. So
right.
Yeah, and you're right. I forgot about that metal bar. Jeez, that was.
Yeah, we had a. I mean, since we left that field, they redid the entire track, and I'm sure they redid the shot put area.
Oh, hopefully.
Hopefully, I would assume that they redid the long jump and high jump areas as well.
Oh yeah.
It was. Yeah, that track was falling apart when we were running on it.
Yeah, just
Well,
like the high school building,
Basically, and they did the high school building when I was in high school, and then they did the track in like 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
I know I knew I already moved down here before.
They
changed it.
Yeah, that is correct. So my last question, actually, I just thought of this, and I can kind of glean your answers based on the way you were just talking, but I'm going to ask you anyway. From your 4 years, and Scott, you can incorporate, or from all your years of high school track, and Scott, you can incorporate your junior and senior years into this as well. Who was your favorite opponent to face during spring track? Scott?
I'll go. Sure. Dedham.
Okay. All right.
And I'll say Dedham because they could never feel the team. Dedham for cross country would cross country is a sport where you need to have 5 runners across. And then they add up the places of your 5 runners for your score. Dedham would never actually have more than 3 runners in cross country.
Oh,
so they
boy.
couldn't. So they went 0-11 every single season.
Oh wow!
and then so come track, they would have 1 runner per event, and I was like, "Ooh, this is the event where we can just rack up a bunch of varsity points." Because you were basically guaranteed to be top 3. And you got varsity points, which was always just weird to think. One year, they actually hid themselves. Their bus came. Their bus dropped them off. And as Wellesley was warming up and Dedham was supposed to be warming up, Dedham was hiding behind the bleachers on the other side. Trying to mask how many people that they had. And it's does that actually work? Because I think we know you don't have a full team. So Dedham was probably the most fun to race against because you just knew that it was a race of your teammates. They were never actually good enough to have a team or have enough people to have a team, I guess. And then Natick otherwise, because Natick is like your football game against Needham. You always want to win.
Mhm.
and it brings out the best of you. I think I've definitely gotten many PRs against Natick.
Nice. Nice. Kyle, what about you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't know. I'd probably say Natick, actually. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I really like their outdoor track, and I kind of like their throwing pit. I remember they had like a nice kind of like gravelly throwing pit, which is really cool. I don't know. Maybe it's just more the aesthetic, but I guess Natick.
That's all right. That's all right. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got a reason. Everybody's got their own reason, so it's all good. But yeah, it's really cool to sort of hear you guys sort of reminisce. I know I've been listening to Kyle sort of describe his first 3 years just himself. To sort of hear a different perspective on it was really cool as well. So thank you for that, Sky. So we're going to kind of move on now to sort of the end portion of our episode. As we always do when we have special guests, we like to sort of give them the floor for any sort of final thoughts or things that they have. So Scott, just whatever, the floor is yours. Whatever, any final thoughts or anything on your end.
Let's go, Bruins. We're about to start.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I'm glad sports are back, at least for now. I'm not sure what's going to happen if teams don't go into a bubble. But at least we have hockey and basketball for however long. I guess probably another month and a half. However long the second, third, and fourth rounds are going to go. Or basketball is still in their first round. So, yeah, we get some – yeah, I'm just glad we have sports because I think when we had the Zoom call in May or April,
there was nothing.
There was nothing. We were watching reruns of whatever was on. It was like I think the Bruins Cup run and the 4 Red Sox runs, and I watched probably every Patriots Super Bowl again because why not?
Why not? Yeah, exactly. Why not? But yeah,
at least we have live sports.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great to have live sports back, and yeah, it's interesting. My final thought is that I just we're sort of talking about high school track and just sort of high school sports in general, and I guess I'm just I'm hoping for the sake of the student athletes out there that at least some of the sports can have their seasons in 2020, 21. I know there's a lot up in the air right now, and the MIAA has sort of rejiggled some things around. I know football has been moved till February through April for high school football this year. So there will be no high school football in the fall this year, and just some again sort of trying to make things work so they can try to have as many sports as possible. I just I feel for the student athletes, the kids who have worked so hard, and especially the seniors who I'm sure we're so excited about their final year in their respective sports. So I guess I just hope that at least for some of them they get to have that. But you just kind of have to wait and see, like we've been doing with everything this year. I think there is some reason to be optimistic. The fact that that we were able to have some sports this summer, like baseball and softball and other things like that, were able to be played. Albeit with a ton of restrictions, but again, there's reason for hope. So I just wanted to send a shout out to all the high school student athletes out there. Stay strong, and hope you can see a return to the fields, courts, rinks, tracks, pools, whatever it may be, in at some point in 2020, 2021. So now I'm going to throw it down to the bottom here to my co-host, Kyle, for his weekly installment of the Suits Reviews. Take it away, Kyle.
All right, I'll do a quick one because I know you probably want to go watch the Bruins game. But I just wanted to go over this quick show called House on Haunted Hill. It's based on a book. It's a horror novel, so obviously the show is a horror show that you can find on Netflix.
So basically, a show I will not be watching at any point.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, if you're not a fan of horror, probably won't like it. But it's honestly though, if you do like horror, if you're even a little bit interested in horror, like any ghost stories and stuff like that, it's a really great show. It's a fantastic, very classic haunted house type of show. It centers on this family, and what I love about it is that it's kind of a time hop show. It's kind of like one of my friends described it as This Is Us, but like the horror version of This Is Us, essentially. Whereas it goes back and forth between when the main characters were kids and they had lived in this house for the summer, and all these kind of crazy things start happening that may or may not be related to ghosts. And then it jumps forward to when they were adults and how kind of that summer has affected them, And I think it really, along with like the really great atmosphere, the general creepiness that this show gives, it really does do a good job at centering on this family drama, and you kind of see how dysfunctional this family is. And I think that's really what makes the show like truly interesting to watch. And it's only 10 episodes. It's from the same director actually who did horror movies. He did very modern horror movie classics, like he did Doctor Sleep recently, Oculus, which is about a haunted mirror, and he did Ouija 2, which actually is not a bad movie, as a lot of people wouldn't believe. But no, it's a great show if you're looking for something very creepy, very atmospheric, and just overall a good story, great characters. I highly recommend watching it. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Again, I probably won't be watching it, but go if that's your type of thing, folks. Definitely check that out because Kyle usually knows what he's talking about, especially when it comes to movies. Scott, thank you as always for joining us. Great to have you on to talk some track, and we'll hope to have you on again soon. And now we get to all go enjoy the Bruins victory, but hopeful victory. But thank you again.
But Kyle's a Habs fan.
Yeah, Kyle is a cow. So his team got knocked out, so it's all good.
That's okay. I'll just rewatch House on Haunted Hill instead.
But Scott, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thanks for having me. So it was fun.
All right, so that's gonna do it for this week's edition of On a Couch Talking Sports. For Scott and for Kyle, I'm Robbie, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.